The 7 days of creation. Day 1. God created light and separated the light from the darkness, calling light day and darkness night. The 2nd day of creation. God created a dome to separate the waters and called it sky. On the 3rd day, God created the dry ground and gathered the waters, calling the dry ground land, and the gathered waters seas. On the 3rd day, he also created vegetation, which was the plants and the trees. Day 4. God created the sun, moon, and the stars to give light to the earth and to govern and separate the day and night. Day 5. God created every living creature of the seas and every winged bird, blessing them to multiply and fill the waters and sky. Day 6. God created the animals to fill the earth, and Adam and Eve. On day 7, God finished his work of creation and rested on the 7th day, blessing it and making it holy. The fall of man. Adam and Eve were placed into the Garden of Eden by God. The environment was perfect. It was full of fruit and everything they would need to survive. There were 2 special trees in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam was given one rule, to not eat from the fruit of either tree. He passed this knowledge on to Eve. Satan then entered the garden, trying to tempt Eve to eat from the fruit of the tree of good and evil. The snake told her that eating from the fruit would make them like God, and to eat it. They then ate the fruit and realized they were naked and covered themselves in embarrassment. God found out, and he punished us with original sin. And that was the fall of man. The story of Noah. The story of Noah begins with God seeing that man was not doing what they were supposed to and was being evil and plaguing the earth. God said he was going to flood the earth, so he told Noah to take his family and 2 of every animal onto an ark. God told Noah specific plans on how to build the ark and where to build it. Noah then took his family and every animal onto the ark. It then rained for 40 days and 40 nights. One other popular story from Noah and the ark is the story of the dove. Noah sent out a dove to search for dry land. A while after he sent out the dove, it came back with an olive branch, which we now see as a symbol of peace. When it was safe for them to leave the ark, Noah made some burnt offerings which pleased God. Then God promised that he would never flood the earth again and made a covenant with Noah, creating a rainbow as a sign of their everlasting covenant. The story of Abraham. The first covenant was between God and Abraham, and Jewish men are circumcised as a symbol of this covenant between him and God. Abraham was promised by God to be a father of a great nation, saying his ancestors would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. He said that Abraham, along with his descendants, must obey God, and in return, God would protect them and guide them to lead into the land of Israel. Later on, Abraham was ordered to change his ways and leave his home for Canaan. Abraham is known for having his son, Isaac, at a very old age. And later on, as a test, God ordered him to march up to the top of the mountain and sacrifice his son, as a sign of his devotion to God. Abraham kept his promise and did not argue with God. He marched to the top, tied Isaac to an altar of sticks, and was about to stab him when God stopped him. This shows the perfect example of obedience to God. The story of Moses begins with the Pharaoh's daughter finding him floating down the river in a basket. Moses' mother abandoned him because all Hebrew males born at the time were killed. Moses was raised by the Pharaoh's daughter in the palace as her own. As Moses became older, he was ordered by God to command the Pharaoh to set the Jews free. The Pharaoh, of course, refused to listen, so God sent down the plagues among Egypt to punish him. The first plague turned the water into blood. The second, frogs. The third, gnats. The fourth, flies. The fifth was all the animals of Egypt becoming ill and dying. The sixth plague, boils. The seventh was hail. The eighth plague was locusts. That was tragic, and the locusts, of course, being locusts, ate all of the crops, so causing them to start to starve. The ninth plague was total darkness. Nobody could see. Everything was pitch black. The last plague of Egypt was the death of the firstborn sons. God passed through Egypt and struck down the firstborn boy of every household. The Jews, to save their sons, were ordered to mark on their door a sign with the blood of a sacrificed lamb. The Pharaoh's son was killed during the last plague, and this let the Jews free. The Pharaoh sent their army to chase them, and Moses and the Israelites end up in the middle of a parted sea. They were then led to freedom. As they passed through the water, Moses set the sea back down, which swept away the Pharaoh's soldiers, and the Israelites were free. After 40 years of wandering in the desert, they arrived at the land of Israel. Moses traveled up to Mount Sinai, called by God to receive the 10 Commandments. Moses came back down from Mount Sinai, greeted by the Israelites worshiping an idol in the form of a golden calf. In anger, Moses broke the 10 Commandments and later went back up to Mount Sinai and got the new 10 Commandments. This famed story of David and Goliath begins with the Philistine army gathered together for a war against Israel. A Philistine giant named Goliath, covered in armor, came out every day for 40 days, challenging and mimicking the Israelites to fight. The whole army, including Saul, the king, feared Goliath. It was David, a young teenager, who challenged Goliath first. A teenage boy against a giant. Nobody thought that he was going to win, as David had a slingshot. Without armor or protection, he used a stone and God's protection and guidance, and took down Goliath. David ended up chopping off Goliath's head and showing it as a sign that God was on his side. The story of Jesus begins with Mary. Mary was told by the angel Gabriel that she was going to give virgin birth to the Son of God and name him Jesus. Jesus Christ was born around 6 BC in a stable in Bethlehem, as there was no room for Mary and Joseph to stay anywhere else, as every place was full. Jesus was visited by shepherds and 3 wise men, the 3 wise men being led by a star to the stable, bringing him gifts like frankincense, gold, and myrrh. Jesus was also baptized by John the Baptist and began preaching the word that he was sent by God. To help Jesus in his journey, he chose his 12 disciples. Together with his disciples, Jesus performed many miracles. He healed and raised the dead. And one of his famous miracles was allowing a paralyzed man to walk, healing the blind, allowing them to see with mud and his spit, and turning loaves of bread and fish into enough food to feed giant crowds of people. During the last moments of Jesus' life, he was crucified. He sacrificed himself to save us and open up heaven so that we could be saved. And that is the story of Jesus.